this conversation because she's in a rotation program at the moment for Texas Instruments. We both graduated in December 2022. I graduated with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering, and she actually graduated with a bachelor's in biomedical engineering. We were also on the same senior design group, which was really fun. That was great. She also has previous internship experience with companies such as Ericsson and Novartis, which is a pretty major biomedical engineering company. Yeah, I guess I'll give you the floor on this one. I was hoping I have some bullet points potentially that we can talk about, but it's really just a conversation. And I guess the first question is, what is your job description? What do you do in a day? And I'll let you take it from there.
Thank you. So, if you're watching this, welcome. And there's a lot to kind of learn from this series in terms of all the different engineers who come on this podcast, essentially. And so to kind of give a bit of background about me, like Mohammed mentioned, I graduated with a bachelor's in biomedical engineering, and now I'm a product marketing engineer at Texas Instruments within the wireless infrastructure division. And essentially, when it comes to a day in the life, it's very much very dynamic, right? You can't really describe like a singular day in the life because the priorities change pretty quickly. But if I had to break it down into 3 different things, it really comes down to daily/weekly meetings in the morning, whether it's with the team or whether it's with my marketing manager, as well as in the afternoon or late morning. It will really revolve around digital marketing initiatives with respect to how we want to kind of boost our online presence with respect to our customers, as well as in the evening sometimes, because a lot of our customers are based in East Asia, we will have customer calls as well as have a middleman or a field applications engineer to kind of facilitate the conversation with customers when we are either looking for opportunity identification of how we can kind of sell our products, primarily our RF sampling transceivers, to those respective customers, depending on what their project needs are and such. So those are kind of the top 3 different initiatives in terms of what a marketing engineer does. And we represent the customer, right? We represent basically the customer internally to the team. Like when we're working with the applications, validation, design engineers who are working much more on the hardware side, we have to very much, tailor any collateral or presentations or tailor any, features specifically to what the customers want. So that's basically just a brief overview of the role itself. And I am currently in a rotation program, as mentioned earlier. So the way it works is it's a 1-year rotation program where I am in 6 months in marketing, and then 6 months will be in applications engineering, which is more on that, once again, hardware aspect. And then I rotate back after a year into marketing.
Yeah, it's a good point you brought up. Rotation programs are something to definitely look into. We actually had a person that was in a rotational program at Siemens. She just finished her first rotation. So she had been with us for a year, and now she's going to New York to complete her second rotation. I guess if the gist of basically what a rotation program is that it's an opportunity to get cross-trained in several departments, right? So let's say you have a 3-year rotation program, or it could be a 2-year. I mean, it really depends on the company, but you can have an opportunity to work in 2 or 3 departments. So you might work in one department for a year, you might work in another department for another year, and then usually at the end of the rotation program, you get to decide kind of what you want to do. So those are pretty cool because you're able to get some insight on several areas of study within your own company. But there's other rotational programs as well where you actually get to go to a different state, different city. So it's a good thing to mention. I guess another thing that I wanted to talk about is challenges, right? So I think the challenges we face now as engineers are definitely different than a calculus problem challenge, right? So like it's totally two different worlds. We're not doing integrals. We're not doing derivatives.
I don't miss them though. I don't miss those the calculus for sure.
Yeah, me neither. What are some challenges you face, and if maybe you don't face any major challenges or anything like that, but even the simple things, right? Maybe if you want to elaborate on that.
For sure. So this is how I'll say it, right? I mean, there are challenges that I know I will face, and then there's challenges that come with the general position. So when it comes to a product marketing engineering role, like I mentioned earlier, it's never really a dull moment, and priorities are constantly shifting, right? So for example, right, one of the challenges that we are facing within our team is essentially, we have tier one, tier two customers, tier one being a lot of the major wireless companies. You can probably imagine who I'm talking about. And a couple of those are based in Asia, which, with the geopolitical landscape, it's a bit difficult to bring in business in some areas, right? So we have to reach into what is called the tier two market, which is also around the same area, around East Asia, but involves a lot smaller companies. So it's essentially reaching out and inquiring on opportunity identification as a marketing engineer, which basically what it means is, are you guys okay? If a customer is specializing in certain antennas or radios, how can we TI plug in? And also another thing that people face is like, how people measure up against their competition as well. So those are a couple of the challenges, I guess, if we're talking head on. But really, when it comes to it in general, is how quickly can you adapt to a shift in priorities? And it's really two things, right? It's not only adaptability, but it's your level of organization, which is probably going to be something I'll talk about a little bit more later on. But it's very much keeping track of all the different initiatives that you're a part of, whether it's not only just limited to your product line, like my product line is wireless infrastructure, but things that happen outside of that, but still in TI. How do you keep track of all of that? And how do you quickly kind of think on your feet when it comes to what matters more right now? I have 4 different presentations that I need to take care of within the next 2 weeks. What's going to make the most sense, basically, to kind of prioritize? And that also kind of segues into, what's your communication like? Are you able to kind of talk with your team, whether it's your manager or whether it's somebody else, whether it's your manager's manager who's kind of heading all of those initiatives in terms of, you have to think in the best interests of your product line, essentially. And I think as a marketing engineer, when you are working with so many different customers on so many different things, it's very easy to get stuck into the granular nature. But at some point, you have to kind of zoom out in terms of, okay, what are our product line's priorities in terms of which major customers, who are we wanting to support the most, and how does this also fit the best interests of our applications engineers who have a limited bandwidth for these kinds of things? So those are kind of the challenges where, we, along with the systems engineers in our team, are kind of at the center of everything because we are immediately customer facing and we have to relay those priorities and that information to the rest of our team. But also we ourselves have to kind of self reframe in terms of, what is the biggest priority and kind of making sure that we are simultaneously winning the business that we need to meet revenue goals as well.
Yeah, it's a good point you brought up. Do you want to be on the more technical side, or do you want to take that technical information, convert it to a different language, essentially? Because business people and engineers don't really speak the same language, is what I've learned. We speak totally two different languages, and business people, they have a different priority. They have a different job title altogether. They have to do certain different things. They don't have time to take the information that I'm giving out and try to understand it. They simply don't have time to do that. So it's an interesting dichotomy between the two, and you have to generate your recommendations and your findings in a way that people that aren't necessarily in your field can understand, which is a very interesting thing. You just kind of solve a problem and that's it. But there's a flow to everything. The things that we do, chances are they're going to go to a next person who has to take that information and send it off to another person. So it's a pretty interesting flow. And once you understand that flow, you're able to, do your job better, because you're able to see the bigger picture, like you mentioned. You also brought up communication, which is probably the biggest thing that
Mhm.
you have to have as an engineer. Shockingly, it's just not something you think about, right? You take so much, you take so many technical classes. You never really think about this, but the reality is, if I can't communicate properly what I want to have done, because as engineers, you're speaking to a whole lot of people, like I mentioned, that are not engineers. And so if you're not able to communicate with them properly, the job's not going to get done. That was basically what I was going to lead my next question into. I kind of just answered it already, but some of the people, I guess, who are some of the people that you interact with on a daily basis, aside from people in your own department?
Mhm.
And I guess, if you already answered that, that's fine. But if you feel like there's more you can add to that, feel free.
Right.
So
Well, there are a lot of different people. So I'll kind of reiterate, of course, who we interact with internal to the team and then external to the team. So as a marketing
sure.
engineer, right, you work pretty much alongside both the applications engineers who function to basically work on the testing and hardware of our devices, as well as the systems engineers who we have two on our team who basically are the ones who kind of they're the ones who actually are creating the next product in our portfolio. Okay, which based on trends in the industry, what makes the most sense in terms of the specifications of our next device that we're going to create. And of course, our design and validation engineers, who are actually based in India, they work more closely with the applications engineers, but it's very important to be on the same page with them when it comes to, okay, test results, how can we properly market this when we're creating basically test reports to feature on our website, for
Right.
example. And outside of our product line, basically, we work with the pricing people before we have to release to market or RTM a device to make sure that it's well priced depending on how the market is. We communicate a lot with field applications engineers or FAEs, who are the ones who are kind of that middleman, especially when it comes to East Asian customers who the culture is very much you want to go through that FAE first before you go directly to the customer in terms of, that opportunity identification and the marketing that we basically do. So we really talk with the field, as we like to call, in terms of, okay, what does this customer want? Can we set up a meeting with these guys? Are they in town? Can we kind of bring them to our lab, etc.? Who else do we really communicate with? I mean, it's really the people we mostly communicate with is those in the field who one field applications engineer, essentially, this is the interesting part. They are an application engineer for basically around 100 different product lines. And so they don't have a lot of
Wow.
knowledge about our product line unless we're kind of, giving them the proper education and just basic fundamentals.
Right.
So we have to speak with them on a pretty frequent basis, whether that's quarterly, monthly, bi-weekly, especially if it's for a specific customer that is very high priority, like one of the tier ones or major customers that I mentioned earlier. So there's a lot of different people inside and outside of our team and company that we interact with. And once again, it's just a very customer facing role, which I personally like a lot because, that dynamic nature, it's very much fitting for the kind of role that I was going for. But it definitely, once again, never a dull moment, always somebody
Yep.
new to kind of talk to connect with, even different product lines in terms of how we can collaborate on a specific device or reference design or solution. That's something else that we kind of do internally. So it's almost endless in terms of who we really interact with.
Right. Right. It's I can't stress it enough. It's the amount of people that you're going to be talking to. Um, it's and the amount of different backgrounds you're going to be interacting with on a daily basis is just insane. I mean, that's pretty much everything that I had to talk about as far as things that engineers do on a daily basis. What can you kind of expect? But yeah, so I mean, thank you so much for joining and providing some insight into what it some insight on what it feels like to be a product marketing engineer. I was always definitely curious about it, so it's nice to hear it from somebody that's actually in the industry. Anything else that you're wanting to add before we head out?
No, I mean, thank you for having me, and I'm happy to drop my LinkedIn in the bio or something like that. Just,
Yeah, that works. That works.
grow the
Awesome.
network. If anybody's interested in kind of learning more, I know that it was very much more at a high level. I guess there's always a lot to talk about the position itself and the industry. So happy to kind of connect in that regard.